Good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Bush. I'm so happy you could be here with us on our CIG television channels as well as live on Radio Cayman. We begin today's press briefing with a prayer from Pastor Winston Rose.
He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your favor and numerous blessings bestowed upon these islands. We thank you for your promise to hear us when we, your people, call upon you, and your promise to deliver us from the perilous pestilence. In response to your promises, we ask for your divine guidance and wisdom to be granted to all our government officials and to those persons responsible for the healthcare, wellness, and all other matters that are necessary for our well-being in these three islands. We petition you for this briefing today, that you will facilitate the clear communication of the information that is needed by all of us who live here. We pray for peace of mind for those who are anxious and fearful, and ask for your protection for all of us. Help each of us to play our part in doing what we're able to do to contribute to the suppression of the virus. We thank you for the success we have had to date. However, as we confront the latest challenges and as we contemplate entering this new phase in our national plan to open the country's borders, we pray for uncommon wisdom in our decision making. Father, help us that whatever is done will be both safe and gainful. We ask these mercies in the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
And thank you, Pastor Rose. We now welcome our panelists, His Excellency Governor Martin Roper, Premier the Honorable Wayne Panton, Minister for Education, the Honorable Juliana O'Connor Connolly, and Minister for Health, the Honorable Sabrina Turner. Also joining us in studio is the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. John Lee, some members of the media, senior civil servants, and the sign language interpreter. As well, some members of the media are joining us via Zoom. We go first to Dr. Lee.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here in person. Unfortunately, it's not under as favorable circumstances as we would all like. I just wanted to give you a recap on the COVID outbreak that we previously reported last week that came to light Wednesday evening of last week. I've previously let you know about 3 community cases, and I'm pleased to say that the one person who is an inpatient as a result of that is doing well and is very stable. There are 2 others who are also stable and unchanged who are isolating at home. There is 1 additional case related to that now who became symptomatic in government approved quarantine facilities, and that is the additional positive COVID case. So we have a total of 4 related to that. A total of 35 direct contacts were isolated and 48 people have been isolated, including the households related to that community outbreak. 80 people in all have been tested for COVID-19 and a further additional 40 screened over the weekend. So quite a bit of screening related to that case. You'll now also be very concerned to hear, and that's why we're having this press conference today, about the case that has been discovered at Georgetown Primary School. In addition to 1 symptomatic child who presented to the flu clinic, there have also been 2 further children identified as positive who are asymptomatic. This brings, sorry, I beg your pardon. We're also contact tracing 1 more individual who is positive, but this contact tracing only began around an hour ago, and so I don't have any further details other than to say there may be a connection here with Georgetown Primary School, but more details will come at a later time. So in all of the 45 people in year 6 at Georgetown Primary School, we have resulted 28 of those, 3 of those in total were positive. Across the islands, therefore, we have seven different households which have people who are positive for COVID-19 disease, and these people are in different geographical locations, and the exposure is not known to be common, and therefore we would say that our status as far as the World Health Organization is concerned is at community transmission at the lowest level of level 1. It is very reassuring to know that the progress of this child is good, the child is doing well. It's also reassuring to realize that our vaccinations are working, in that this essentially was going on without a lot of us knowing about it. I would like to reiterate that we'll follow the World Health Organization's guidance on contact tracing, and that only primary contacts of somebody who's positive will be asked to isolate it. And public health will give that advice and have given that advice directly to the people who need to do it, and nobody else needs to isolate. A direct contact would mean somebody living in the same household or somebody having immediate physical contact, such as a hug or a kiss. And then also, we all know to be at less than 2 meters for more than 15 minutes with somebody. A lot of people have been tested as a result of the virtually open invitation at Georgetown Primary School that public health were able to achieve today. And I'm very grateful to the team for again springing into action. And I understand that they have swabbed over 600 people, and those results will gradually come in over the night until we get a much fuller picture tomorrow. That's really the end of my report about about today's business. Apart from to describe a little story, I mean, I've been in the United Kingdom now for the last 6 weeks, as many of you will have known, attending to a family matter. 6 weeks in a country where we know the Delta variant is quite widespread. And of course, I know about infection prevention and control, but I had my hair cut. Nobody was wearing masks when I had my hair cut. I went to the butcher's. I went to the baker's, I went to the supermarkets, I went to the pub, I went out to dinner with my friends, went to restaurants. And in most of these occasions when we were sitting talking, we weren't wearing masks. Every time I went to visit my parents, I did a lateral flow test the day before to make sure that I was okay before I went to visit them. And when I came back, I went into quarantine and my PCR test was negative. So it is perfectly possible to lead a very good and full life in a country where there is COVID, provided that you're following the right rules to keep yourself safe. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. We now go to the Honorable Premier, Mr. Wayne Panton.
Thank you very much, Donna, and thank you to everyone who has joined us this afternoon for this latest COVID update. Let me start by saying that this is obviously a very challenging time for the country, particularly for our people, our population who have not had to have these types of concerns for some time. But we knew that this day was going to come at some point where we do have COVID transmission in the community. We simply thought that it was going to be probably a month and a half from now, 2 months from now, rather than now. But here we are. I want to say, firstly, thank you to all of my colleagues, to the people from public health who have done an amazing job. We sort of reconvened late yesterday evening and went on into the wee hours of the morning. And they have worked very hard, done a fantastic job. They're reaching out to the parents of the school. My colleague, Minister Juliana, as the education minister, has done a great job with her team in terms of dealing with the parents of Georgetown Primary School, the teachers, the staff there. My colleague, Minister Turner, from her health perspective, has done an excellent job, and I want to thank HE, the governor, for joining us again. I don't want to leave out anyone else, so let me say the program board as well has been an excellent source of advice, as they have always been, not just for this government, but for the former government as well. The collective effort that we are all seeking to put forward here is to manage our borders, manage this situation now to ensure the safety of our people, and in particular to do our best to ensure the safety of our children. We have a very high vaccination rate, but we need it. We know we need it to get higher. And as Dr. Lee has noted, we are clearly showing the benefits of the high level of vaccinations that we have. But we need to continue to push that, because as we have said many times, that is the key to us, I feel, and it's entirely supported by the evidence and many of them in the medical community, that is the key to us being able to manage COVID in our community and provide safety for our children. So as Dr. Lee noted, in terms of going by the WHO definition, we are in this low level of community transmission. But that for us at this point effectively reflects, given that it is much earlier than anticipated, for us, I think it reflects a game changer. We have not had an opportunity, even though a lot of effort has been expended in terms of trying to engage with the public, educate people around the issues, get us out of this perspective that we have been in for some time, that we have complete safety. In order to move forward and reflecting the reality that someday this was going to be back, we needed to, and we need to have the time to be able to educate the people of the country and ensure that they understand all of the risks, what they have to do, and to work in the community and deal with their families and children. So this for us at this point is really a game changer. So in terms of our plans, we are going to announce today that we are pausing phase 3 of our reopening plan for the rest of this year. We don't want to be rushing anything. We want to remain cautious and be able to carefully consider the various steps that we need to put in place to address community spread and to ensure that our people feel safe and to ensure that our children are best protected. So we are imminently going to be making changes through regulations. Some of these changes include mandating masks in indoor areas, including churches, schools, supermarkets, bars, and insisting on the use of hand hygiene. Masks will not be required, obviously, for outdoor activities as long as the crowd limits are acknowledged. We will probably be reducing some of those crowd limits. We haven't completed the regulations, as I noted, but that will be imminent. We will probably be somewhere in the region of 100, a limit of 100 people for indoor events and 250 people for outdoor events. In terms of other matters that we're seeking to change, obviously social distancing is an aspect of this. We will also be seeking to make a change specifically to the quarantine requirement. Currently, for vaccinated travelers, the quarantine requirement is 5 days. We're proposing to take that to 7 days. Effectively, then there will be a 7-day quarantine period. The testing will be on day 8. Of course, the 10 days for those who are vaccinated but unverified will remain, and 14 days for those who are unvaccinated will remain as well. Now, you might ask why the change in terms of the quarantine period. Effectively, when this was first recommended to us as a proposal, there was a pre-flight PCR test requirement that would effectively have been done 2 days, maybe as much as 3 days ahead of the flight. Circumstances have changed. Technology has changed. Equipment has changed. Particularly at airports, for example, you can now get a PCR test in an hour before a flight. So that has effectively reduced the actual quarantine period from what we thought was some ways in around 7 or 8 days to really just 5 days. So instead of trying to change the pre-flight testing, we leave that as it is, and we just extend the quarantine period in Cayman by an extra 2 days. So that is the proposal there, which will be reflected in new regulations going forward. The geotagging will be re-implemented as well. We have had a number of reports over the past several weeks of quarantine breaches. In fact, we've seen some of those quarantine breaches being prosecuted this week. Based on the reports from the police, the indications are that they typically did not involve the traveler leaving the quarantine location, but rather others from the outside coming in to the quarantine location. So that may not, putting on the geotags, re-implementing the geotags may not have that much of an effect in relation to that scenario. But the fact is, we want to basically ensure that we do everything we can to minimize further risk. So even though there's not a lot of evidence to support putting it back in, we're going to put it back on to ensure that we take a belt and braces approach in respect of that. We, as you know, no unvaccinated tourists are allowed in the Cayman Islands. We will want to effectively limit those who can come in who are not vaccinated. If you're a Caymanian, of course, if you're a permanent resident, if you are a dependent on a work permit, then you can be unvaccinated. But other than that, we will slightly change the approach that has been taken in the past so that people who are unvaccinated are further restricted in terms of coming in to our country. We absolutely need to do this in order to continue to protect our older, vulnerable folks, as well as specifically our unvaccinated children. Of course, we urge those, on every occasion we do this, and I don't know how many different ways we can say it, how many different ways we can beg people to do it, but please, once again, go out and get vaccinated. This vaccine is safe, it's approved, and it works. You've heard Dr. Lee's opinion in terms of the vaccine, the fact that we have a significant vaccine distribution in the country, being responsible probably for this current outbreak of community transmission going unnoticed for some little time. The vaccines work. That's what they are designed to do. They will protect our older people. They will protect you. We need to put a vaccinated wall of safety around our children, Our children cannot get vaccinated at this point. We are very much hoping that in the coming months, we will be able to have authorization and have the support of the United Kingdom in implementing a vaccine program for children. At the moment, we all know that that isn't possible. We need to have that solid wall of vaccinated people around our precious children to protect them. So please go out, get vaccinated. We're also planning on putting in security measures to protect our sister islands. I think there is absolutely a clear recognition that we have a lot of people in that community who are more vulnerable than the normal distribution demographically, and they obviously have less significant facilities there to be able to manage any difficulties. So we're proposing to put in place controls around that to further minimize the opportunity for any kind of community spread there. I want also the people of the country to know that while we have been taking an extremely diligent approach, and we've always reflected very carefully on the various components, the various factors that are relevant, that are of concern to our people, our parents, our mothers, fathers, even our children. I want you to know that we understand those the realities around that, and we are cognizant of those at all times. People probably know enough about me to know that I know, unfortunately, more than others, and thankfully that is a limited group in terms of company. But I know what it is to lose a child, and I want people to understand how much care and concern and how much diligence we reflect in everything we do in trying to ensure that our people are safe and our children are as safe as possible. This is not about economics. I don't want to see any comments about, this reopening plans or about greed or anything like that. It's not about that at all. It's about a recognition that we don't know how long this is going to go on, and the government has a responsibility to the country to plan for a future which might include, for some time, having to live with a virus, live with a disease that we need to manage. And we're not going to learn how to manage it by keeping the borders closed. And it definitely isn't about politics either. I have no interest in interjecting politics in any of this. This is about our people. This is about our country. This is about the success of our country. This is about our families. This is about our children. This is about success for all of us. We will get through this together, ladies and gentlemen. We will get through this together. I want you to understand that and have the confidence that we will get through this together. I also want to say, lastly, that it does not help us at all to have the speculation going on social media, the comments, the unnecessary spreading of rumors, the creation of the rumors, the spreading of the rumors. These, at times like this, cause far greater pain and unnecessary distress for businesses, for individuals, for parents, for children. This is all unnecessary. So please, ladies and gentlemen, refrain from creating this sort of stuff, refrain from distributing this sort of stuff because it adds nothing. It is, trust me, at the end of the day, it's not of any entertainment value at all. It only causes pain and distress to our families and our people. It is unnecessary, so please don't do it. I think at that point, I will say thank you very much, and I will let the rest of my colleagues speak. But I want to say God bless our Cayman Islands. And as I said before, together we will get through this. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Premier. Before we go to His Excellency, I would like to make an appeal to the Cayman public to encourage each and every one of you to go and get your vaccine if you're able to. I was hesitant for quite some time, and I decided to go for it last week, Thursday, and was accompanied by our Honorable Premier. If you're able to get the vaccine, I appeal to you to please go and be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem.
Thank you, Donna.
Your Excellency.
Thank you very much as well, Donna. Thank you very much. And let me first of all just thank the Premier. He thanked everybody else, but Premier, I want to thank you for everything you're doing at this incredibly difficult time. And I know you and I work very closely together, and I know just what an incredibly caring, considerate human being you are, and you are putting in huge effort, as all of your colleagues are, to handling this pandemic. I do recognise it's a time of stress and anxiety for everyone in our community. We've had an incredibly safe bubble for 18 months, and it doesn't quite feel like that just now. But we should remain calm, and I do believe we can take great comfort from the fact that our vaccination rates give us a lot of protection, one of the highest rates anywhere in the world. And we still only have a small number of cases of community spread. Itself a sign that, as the Premier said, the vaccines are doing their job, though we should be ready for this to go up as testing and tracing continues. But we're a long way from having to go into any kind of lockdown. As the Premier also said earlier today, that isn't necessary. But we do need to learn to live with COVID. As we have repeatedly said in these press conferences, it is not going away, and especially because Delta is just so infectious. That is really a game changer in this global pandemic and why this is happening to us at the moment. I know it is even more upsetting for everyone in the community to hear that children have tested positive for COVID. It must be an especially worrying time for their families. The global COVID experts working for Public Health England spoke at length yesterday to Cabinet and the Premier's caucus about many issues relating to the pandemic. And they did reassure us, as Dr. Lee has also, that when children become affected, they generally get a much less severe disease than can affect adults. And I very much hope that the small number of children so far affected and anyone else recently affected recovers swiftly. This week's events have therefore proven that COVID is here in Cayman. Dr. Lee confirmed 7 different households affected by community spread. And so far, we're not able to say categorically if it has got into the community through a quarantine breach or in some other way. I am well aware, because of my responsibilities under the Constitution, that we do have some people involved in illegal activity arriving on our shores after undeclared boat trips to and from Jamaica. We do not know if that is a source of this breach, but it is one possibility. But notwithstanding all of that, quarantine should not be treated lightly. Whilst we still have these protective measures in place, everyone must adhere to the rules. Please do not leave your place of quarantine. Do not have visitors while in quarantine, and make sure you receive deliveries in a COVID-safe, contactless way. Read the instructions you are given before your quarantine starts and follow them very carefully. Every one of us needs to assume responsibility for the welfare of our community. Otherwise, you are likely to be prosecuted. The recent cases of community transmission have encouraged more people to take the vaccine to protect themselves, and that is very welcome. As I said earlier, our vaccine rates are very high, now at over 75% of the population. 81% of the eligible population are fully vaccinated. But like the Premier, I urge more to come forward, particularly our younger people, those between 12 and 18 and under 30s. We need more in those groups to come forward to get the vaccine. If every eligible age group was at 80% coverage, this would give us the very best chance of stopping COVID in its tracks. This is called the firebreak effect. And even for new variants, a high percentage of vaccine uptake will give us a very strong firebreak effect. So please do continue to come forward. I know some people have been asking, and I've had calls in my office about this, why we cannot offer the Sinopharm vaccine in Cayman. We asked the Public Health England experts that direct question yesterday, and they told us that the manufacturers have not asked for UK approval for that vaccine, so it has no license in the UK. Therefore, the UK would have no plans to send that vaccine to us. On boosters, we heard that the UK today approved a booster program for over 50s and that Pfizer is the vaccine of choice for that program because it is well tolerated and it has a very good effect. We have ordered booster shots today for all relevant age groups in Cayman, and we're waiting to hear when they arrive. But I do expect we will be able to start our booster program very soon, which is very good news. Now, I know that government has not taken this decision today to postpone, taken the decision lightly to postpone the removal of quarantine for vaccinated travellers on the 14th of October. Public Health England advice yesterday was that we are in a strong place if we decide to go further in our reopening. But they did say that we do need to consider three things very carefully before doing so. One, our health system must be very well equipped to respond to any cases of community transmission. And while the recent cases this last week were an incredibly useful test run of our systems, they did show that they could benefit from additional resourcing. Two, higher vaccination rates among the under 30s would really help ensure these effective fire breaks I mentioned. And three, infection rates in feeder countries need to be considered in any policy response. So there are, as the Premier said, a number of areas now requiring further work, including lengthening the 5-day quarantine to 7 days, the electronic tagging. We have to reduce the number of positive cases that are coming into our islands through further restrictive travel measures. And I do want to add my voice to what the Premier said about misinformation. I've seen a credible amount of that this afternoon, and it really is unhelpful. So please do get your information from official sources, and please do not spread misinformation on social media because it causes so much alarm, upset, and anguish to many people. So I just want to say that I fully support the decisions that the Premier has announced today. The situation is under control, and our health teams from Dr. Lee, HSA downwards are doing an incredible job under enormous pressure. I've been greatly impressed since arriving in these islands by the resilience that everyone here has shown, and I am confident that we will meet these latest challenges with confidence and resolve. Thank you, Donna.
Your Excellency, we now go to the Minister for Health, the Honorable Sabrina Turner.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Donna. Today marks a day that I'm quite sure, sitting here in this seat amongst my colleagues and working into the wee hours of the morning, came with a lot to consider. As a mother, as a wife, as an aunt, I can only imagine the anxiousness and nervous many households right now are facing. And I can assure you that as confident as we are, as poised and as controlled as you see us, this is not an act, because what we are embarking on and what we're experiencing right now is reality. But what we are humbly asking each and every one of you to do this evening is to take this serious and to let you know that without your cooperation, without your assistance, without you following the protocols and showing that you can be a catalyst of change, that you can help us fight this fight, that there is no playbook. No one has the playbook to refer to in order for us to contain, to manage. And here we are again this evening, wholeheartedly appealing to each and every one of you who is eligible to get vaccinated to go and get vaccinated. On this note, I know that the ladies and gentlemen of the public health staff especially has been under significant pressure, but within our very nature, within our very DNA, in choosing that occupation of choice, we got it. We are ready. And because of that, to give you some information, January of 2020, there were 69 staff in the public health department. In January of 2021, that was increased to 72. In September of this year, it is now 83. And we're seeking to deploy and give an additional 30 persons in order to assist in that department so that we will have sufficient resources on hand in order to help us fight this fight. While much has been made in areas to which people may not have been cooperating with us and thinking of the public good, such as in observing the quarantine regulations alike, there has been a huge positive public response in going to get vaccinated. Just today, currently at Cayman Bay, where there's an active vaccination clinic going on, there's a total of 195 persons that availed themselves to the vaccine, 159 of which was first dose, and second doses was 36 second doses. I want to appeal to each person to continue to go ahead and take this vaccine once you're eligible to do so. I have to thank and congratulate and indeed celebrate for all of those who are responding and assisting us in our fight. But we also have to continue in the adjustment of our behavior in order to get ahead of this. We have seen huge, from Saturday being out on the road, myself, I am so pleased for persons in our community for being proactive. And definitely I've seen an increase in number in persons from Saturday wearing of mask. I've seen corporate Cayman step up to the plate and have hand sanitizing station. And I'm also going to ask all of our corporate persons to aid and making or considering even implementing contactless approach when it comes to debit card transactions in aiding and helping us in this fight and definitely lowering and lessening the transmission points. Cayman, I'd like to remind you that the best way and the most effective way to prevent the spread of this disease is to exercise, again, facial covering, frequent hand washing techniques, cough and sneeze in a tissue, stay home as much as possible, and exercise practice and can mandate that all persons entering their place of business must have a form of facial covering. I want to also encourage all persons that for anyone who is experiencing any symptoms whatsoever of flu-like symptoms, that we're asking you to stay at home. Or alternatively, you can contact the 24-hour flu hotline or your general practitioner, and you can call 1-800-534-8600, 947-3077, 925. Healthy mental health. This is something that I do not take lightly, as my position allows me to look at this 360. And to help you manage, I'll quickly just give you 6 to 7 quick tips. try to maintain perspective. Find a healthy balance in relation to media coverage. Ensure you have access to good quality information. Have conversations with your children and young people about COVID-19. Families and caregivers of children and young people should discuss news of the virus with those in their care and in an open, frank, honest way. Try your best to relate facts without causing alarm and in a way that is appropriate for the children's age group and their temperament. It is vitally important to listen to any questions that your children may have. Let them know that they are safe and that it's normal for them to feel concern. We all share that. There's no age factor that goes with that. If you find that the media or the news is getting too much for them, then encourage them to limit their exposure. Try to maintain practical and a calm approach. Try not to make assumptions, and don't be afraid to seek support. It can also help to stay in touch with friends and family, eat a balanced diet, and stay physically active. Try to sleep well and avoid the abuse of alcohol, tobacco, and illicit drugs. Acknowledge feelings of distress and seek further professional support if required. If you are currently being treated for a mental health condition, it is critical that you stay on your treatment where possible. Stay in contact with your healthcare professional, counselor, and support groups. Overall, please remember that part of staying safe includes taking care, again, of our mental health. If you feel worried or overwhelmed, there's many of resources available, and the mental health hotline is 1-800-534-6463. And it's open Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Finally, I must repeat that our best protective and preventative measure is to being vaccinated against COVID-19. Having this protection for yourself and for your eligible loved ones will surely give you the greatest peace of mind possible in these unsettling times. We're so incredibly fortunate here in the Cayman Islands to have COVID-19 vaccine so easily available. And if you're not vaccinated, again, please get vaccinated as soon as you can. Please remember that we are all working together for the health and safety of our people and our home. This is no time to play politics. This is no time to spread malicious rumors. This is no time to give anything that is not factual. Stay safe, Cayman. God bless.
Thank you very much, Minister for Health, the Honorable Sabrina Turner. We now go to Minister for Education, the Honorable Juliana O'Connor-Connolly.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon to all the panelists. Dr. Lee has kindly conveyed the facts as they obtained to the Georgetown Primary School. Once we got the information last night, in place, and I certainly didn't hesitate to make the decision to close down the school because the safety of our children is always of paramount consideration. You have gotten the reports from Dr. Lee as to where they have reached with the level of testing. Also want to go on record to thank Public Health for the sterling job that they did not only today, but I have every confidence that they will continue to do, as you've indicated by the Honorable Premier and my other colleagues here, that COVID is in the world to stay. So tomorrow there'll be no school at Georgetown again because we're going to ensure that it's properly sanitized, that the testing continues. and that we can make our decisions from an informed position based on the science and indeed empirical evidence. So what then do I require of Cayman? I require that we continue to be resilient, as we have proven to have been over the various hundreds of years. We've seen that in natural disasters, we've seen that in economic downturns, we've seen that in pressures from the global financial forum, and now we have COVID. But this one thing I know, that the God who have delivered us before is more than able to deliver us again. And it has come to pass. We ought not panic, because knowledge empowers. We have an excellent team. And despite what the naysayers say, politics being what it is, I just ignore the politics, because I set my course, even as Christopher Columbus did. Sometimes we may not know the new worlds and the new frontiers and the new boundaries that we're going to discover. But when you set your goal and you have your plans in place, as we have done in the education ministry, last year when this happened, we had a recovery plan, remote learning. Today, we had to work some long hours last night and into the morning. But because our goal and our objective is to keep our children, my children, safe within the educational institution environment, we were able to release an updated version of guidelines, not just our public schools, because I do have responsibility for the private schools as well, to the private schools, and that should go on our website and our social media later on tonight for the benefit of the press who may wish to access it. And it's an evolving document because of the evolving fashion that COVID has. We just cannot etch it in stone. So do not get deterred when you hear that this one isn't ready, the next one isn't ready. What do I require of you is to be ready. How can you be ready? By getting your vaccination. My children in the school has not legally been approved to get their vaccinations. So what can you do? As adults from 12 and over, go and get your vaccinations. We heard the increase in public health staff, and we will continue to increase, even though recruiting is difficult, because every country is going through this. But guess what? Because of you listening to the science, because of you adhering to your good Caymanian common sense, we still have not reached where we want to reach with tertiary education, because it's a journey. But one thing I know, the mariners of yesterday, our forefathers and foremothers, they were able to sail the high seas and became the envy of the world. The late Russell Johnson, back in the 60s, when we had to diversify our economy, came up with innovative financial principles that, although we have less than 100,000 people, the great G7s of the world look at Cayman and see us as a threat because of our success. There is an opportunity, Cayman, to leave a very indelible mark on our history. If we show the world that we're small, but we're Talawa, you Jamaicans can interpret that when you go home tonight with your children. We can show them, not through smugness or arrogance, but we are determined to live with whatever comes our way. We come from the philosophy, you see, Cayman, that when we get lemons, we can use them in many, many different fashions. But as a good Caribbean person, you throw a little sugar in some water and make some good swanky or lemonade. Let us take this opportunity of COVID and teach our neighbors that as Caymanians, Caymanian kind is not a byword for tourism, but Caymanian kind is a way of life for every single person in this jurisdiction. So what can you do? You can also wear masks. And I know we have a lot of machoism in the Caribbean, but wearing masks, if I could break it down and perhaps go back in my teacher mode, if you had two persons standing within that personal space, let's for the sake of this conversation, say 2 feet apart, and neither of those persons had on a mask. And because we're human beings, we sneeze from time to time. And hopefully you didn't have a flu, but that's becoming more possible with the flu season that we're now so embarking thereon. If neither person had a mask and you sneeze, on the balance of probabilities, you would be the recipient of some of that body fluid. If you took care of yourself and you had a mask and the other person did not have a mask and they sneeze, chances are, on the balance of probabilities, some of it would land on the outer covering of your mask. If the other person did what we're asking you to do, take personal responsibility and wear a mask, where both persons, if you go down this imagery with me, had on a mask, the most that would happen is that the person who sneezed kept it within their mask. Get the picture? Go mask up, Cayman. That is what I'm requiring of you to do. Yes, there are children who are under 5, and it's difficulty. We have a fairly high percentage of SEN students within our populace. Go through with them, show them how to mask up, how to take it off, so that they won't be afraid. And I just want to say, what do I require of you? I require of you to test positive for faith, to keep your distance from doubt, which is inclusive but not limited to the garbage we see on social media and the innuendos and the implications that are there. What do I require of you? To isolate yourself from fear. How do you do that? By being soundly grounded in the Lord Jesus Christ. And I come back to that again, because if we don't have a root and a foundation, our optimism results in diminishing returns. But for those of us who've tested and tried, and our testimonies that he woke us up this morning and he blessed us with another day in one of the most wonderful places in this entire world, we owe it, Cayman, to our children and our students to get masked up, to adhere to social distances, to make sure that we've practiced proper hygiene. We have done and we are continue to do everything within our possibilities as a government. Unless you make a mistake, these persons here, those persons there in the government are all human beings. They get tired, they have feelings, they have families, they have responsibilities. And while they're trying to do what you elect them to do, to protect all of the people in these islands, regardless from whence you came, regardless how you look, regardless of what color you are, regardless of what social and economic demographics you come from. Again, I repeat, out of many, we are one people. Mask up, Cayman, for the good of Cayman. What do I require of you? Be Caymanian, be human, exercise Caymankind, because my children deserve to be protected, and I expect no less of you. I thank you for the opportunity to so express my feelings today.
Thank you very much, Minister O'Connor Connolly. I would like to apologize for the technical difficulties that we're experiencing at this moment. We're going to go to a short break so that we can reloop everything and be back with you in just a bit.
I'm so fucking tired of this argument because yes, you can still get COVID if you are fully vaccinated, but do you know the statistics to that? Do you know the odds of getting COVID if you are fully vaccinated? Because I do. I'm not a medical expert, but I'm really fucking good at numbers. So let me show you. There are 330 million people in the United States, right? Divide that by the 41 million COVID cases that we've had, and that gives you a 1 in 8 chance of catching COVID in the United States. 1 in 8 people have gotten COVID in the United States. Of those 41 million people, you've had 670,000 or so deaths, right? That's a 1 in 61. 1 in 61 people in the United States have died from COVID. 1 in 61 people who have gotten COVID in the United States have died, okay? Let's take this further. There are 173 million people who are fully vaccinated in the United States, right? Do you know how many breakthrough cases there have been? Since as of August 30th, there's been 12,908. That gives you a 1 in 13,402 chances of catching COVID if you are fully vaccinated. 1 in 13,402 versus 1 in 8. Let's take it a step further. There have been 2,437 deaths related to COVID, or people who are COVID positive and fully vaccinated, right? 480 of those aren't related to COVID, which means that they died from a car accident or something totally unrelated to COVID. So we're going to round that to 2,000. 173 million people in the United States are fully vaccinated. Divide that by the 2,000 that have died fully vaccinated from COVID. That gives you a 1 in 86,500 chances of getting COVID and dying if you are fully vaccinated. So unvaccinated, you have a 1 in 8 chance of catching COVID. You have a 1 in 61 chance of dying from COVID. And fully vaccinated, you have a 1 in 13,402 chances of catching COVID and a 1 in 86,500 chances of dying from COVID. How about we all just realize that billions of shots have been given worldwide, billions of people have been fully vaccinated, and we have a way to end this pandemic. We have a way for children to stop losing their fucking parents. Go get the fucking shot.
To go through it. I don't argue with anti-vaxxers, so let me just put that out there. I don't debate that. I have no time for beat up my good chest and my good lungs for no anti-vaxxer. Let me just say that. Let me just put that out there right now. You understand? Because as me tell you, enough people got Oberman for tie the people them son, bring down the people them business, and when the Oberman give the something for drink, and the vial for drink and the portion for drink, you never ask him which what in I ate. You never ask him if he graduated from the Ober College or the Ober High School or the Ober Basic School. When you go for tie the people them son and mash up the people them daughter and tie the people them business, mash up people them business and turn down the people them picking in a school, when him a bat you never ask him when at the bat yet. Ever. We eat at different restaurant every day. I wanna inspect round there. We don't know if them are cooking a toilet bowl, pot, plate, pan, or nothing. You go, you buy the food. Someone with the lifestyle where I live, our kid will faster than the vaccine if I that to not pray. Because the man where you're there with a beat in your neck, you want blood clot to take you before the vaccine shovel you. The worthless man where they will stress you and give you mental problem, physical problem, psychological problem, that more deleterious to your health than the vaccine. Yeah, you know, me ever thought the real things. Because, hey, as me tell you, my tongue was resting. It live back now. So none of the things them wanna worry about and the vaccine, you have more urgent things to worry about. The worthlessness was spread out in your life like shit. Worry about that will kill you faster than the vaccine that will slow you down. And that me I talk about. The man where you're there with will have 3 baby mother with you, where cheat and have unprotected sex out the road every minute. Him more for killer than the vaccine. He's a walking dead. You know when the time him exposed to AIDS, syphilis, gonorrhea, and that me I talk about. The casual sex so you have up and down with this man, that man, because everybody want be sugar baby, and everybody want money and bleach and tattoo from neck to ankle, and the man they wanna have and the client they wanna have. Yes, and the nana and the cha-cha and the nibble skibble that are killing faster than the vaccine. When you meet the man for the first time and him drive one Ranger, I want X5, I want vehicle, and you cock up to round a back and you go round this, so round a fall cube, and then with the man in a one night, and you don't even know the man real name, that can kill you faster than the vaccine. So there are certain things. When I see this hypocrisy and people telling me, oh, the vaccine, but I say, what? Hell, excuse me, point of information. But the lifestyle where I live is more deleterious.
All right, folks. We are going to, I guess, have a little chat until and if they get the stream back up. There are some technical difficulties. Good evening, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Sandra. Good evening, Cayman Islands.
Good to see you. Let me just get my lights and stuff sorted out. Say hi to everybody while I'm doing that. All right, folks. We are going to, I guess, have a little chat until and if they get the stream back up. There are some technical difficulties. Good evening, Kevin. How are you?
Yep, I'm doing well. Good evening, Sandra. Good evening.
Yeah, Kevin, sorry. I was leaving it to you to chat with people until I came back. But I think I
It looked
can't
like
hear
my
you.
screen froze as well.
Oh,
Doing something
so
weird.
everybody's having tech issues tonight.
It seems like it. It seems like it. But no, I'm here. Are you ready to rock and roll, or you want me to go ahead and start
Yeah,
talking in the
let's
meantime?
we're ready to go.
Okay, yeah, no, so yeah, a lot of real, what I feel, positive things coming out of the press conference. Personally, Sandra, I thought a lot of real good moves are being made by the PACT government to really safeguard the Cayman Islands. I am quite pleased with a lot of the announcements personally that came out. What about your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, listen, no super surprises here. I anticipated the government postponing the reopening in any event. Um, so that wasn't entirely a surprise. I think that personally, I believe that we have had community spread for some time. I don't think that this is anything new. I think what is happening is the emergence of the community spread is a very different situation. So Leroy said that he's having some issues with volume. I think most people can hear us, Leroy. So maybe just refresh your feed.
Yeah, I had to
So,
refresh my feed initially too. There was a hiccup somewhere in there when you
yeah.
were handing it over. So yeah, it looks like
So let's just recap what transpired today. So obviously, I am not finished with all of my notes for publication, but basically, we have 3 children at Georgetown Primary who have confirmed positive cases of COVID, and they've now tested out of 45 persons tested so far. At the beginning of the press conference, they had 28 persons that had results in. They're still waiting on the balance of those, but so far of those, they have 3 children, 2 asymptomatic and 1 symptomatic. So it seems like that 1 symptomatic child would have been patient 0, so to speak. So that was the first
that
child.
would be called the index case. Yes, that's the number
Yes.
1 case, and then they're going to be looking at all of the others now from that
Yep.
one case who presented at the flu clinic, which
Mhm.
is good. That's where it was detected as well too. That means the parent of that child did the right thing. Child sick, went to flu clinic and quickly identified so we could stop the spread. And that's what people need to do, especially in these times that we're in. People often have allergies and other things going on, and this is the time that you have to really take it and just assume, you know what, I want to get this checked just to make sure. I want to err on the
Mhm.
side of caution, because guess what, it just may be COVID, and that seems to be exactly
Exactly.
what happened in this
Absolutely.
situation.
And interestingly enough, Kevin, I saw someone forwarded me a post off of someone's social media page recently where they mentioned that they had been sick for like 3 weeks and, oh, this was a really bad cold. And someone said, why aren't they going to the flu clinic? Why haven't they been tested for COVID? Like, you can't take for granted the fact that, it is or it isn't COVID when you've been sick, especially that long. So it's just kind of crazy that people are getting sick and they're not thinking that there's a possibility that it could be COVID. this community transmission, these cases would have been here. They just weren't quite exposing or manifesting themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
and I still believe it's not extremely widespread, but it has the potential of going there very quickly. We know the Delta variant is a very, very contagious strain of COVID, unlike the one even previously. It was less contagious. It was still contagious, but a lot less contagious than the Delta variant. And the Delta variant is easily able to really pick up some speed. So we want to make sure that these cases are quickly identified. So it doesn't get to that point. And I believe, doing what they did to really address the situation, it was the right move.
yes. So unfortunately, they had some technical difficulties. So the feed got lost. So again, Richard, no, the press conference, it might still be ongoing. We just can't access it, unfortunately, because they had some issues with their online feed.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye too on their Facebook page to see if they
it's not there.
It's not there. So but it looks like, just to highlight some of the other things that came out of that, Sandra, they're pausing phase 3 for the rest of the year. And they're also going to be introducing a mask requirement for indoors. So if you go to the bar, if you go to a restaurant, when you're indoor at work, you're going to have to be wearing a mask or face cover, as well as when you're outside, it's not going to be required at this time. And then they're also looking at limiting crowds. They said potentially outdoors would be 250 is the largest gathering you could have. Indoors 100, but again, he did say that they're still discussing that. He did say, we're not 100% confirmed on those numbers, but that's at least the discussions that they're having. And then they moved into some changes to the quarantine, which I know, I believe they were getting a lot of negative feedback from a lot of folks saying, the quarantine period was a bit shorter than a lot of people had hoped for. And
let's talk about that, Kevin, because I saw quite a bit of misinformation, and I mean there's so much misinformation, folks. I mean it's sad that people keep saying the same things over and over again, and I feel like people keep saying the same things over and over again because they figure if they say it enough, maybe they'll believe it and other people will believe it as well. But one of the things that people are saying is it should be more than 14 days. That's ridiculous because there's no scientific basis for it being more than 14 days. And I thought that we had this conversation at the very beginning of the lockdown as to why the government put 14 days in place. But, what scientific information do you have, Kevin, when it comes to a lockdown period? 14 days is the platinum standard.
Right. That's the platinum standard, the recommendations from the CDC. Now, if a person is infected or exposed to COVID and they end up getting COVID-19, they're not going to really be infectious beyond 14 days. 14 days is really what that period is. And so it's safe to say that that's a really good standard. Now, this is where some people may get a little confused, and this is likely how some of the disinformation started to make its way through social media. But there are some individuals, especially in the early days when the tests and stuff started to come out, that people would test positive for COVID-19 2-3 months after, because some of the virus is in them. But just because the virus is inside you does not mean that you are infectious and able to infect others with it. So I think when you get these guidance from the CDC, and this is what I had talked to you about a little earlier, that when you go on the CDC website and you're reading some of the information, you sometimes get really confused, no matter what your educational status or level is, because it is a tough read because there's a lot of what we call nuances within it. And so that's one of the things that people got to understand is beyond 14 days, you're not going to really be infectious anymore. I do know that in Cayman, they have been extremely, I would say they have put safety way at the top, unlike a lot of other areas where they said, you know what, I'm going to do some reductions inside there just to get people out and keep things moving. Cayman really is doing a very good job at making sure that they're not budging for safety. The time that they did a little bit of that, really, they were starting to get a lot of criticized, and then that was with the 5-day quarantine type of thing, where that, up to debate on how that was handled. I really do believe Premier Panton did a good job at explaining why they came about making that decision. It was something that they made sense, that made a lot of sense, and they were balancing some of the numbers based on when those test results was going to likely come back from when they actually took that PCR test prior to traveling.
So Gloria says that the vaccine should be tested on politicians first. Well, I'm happy to tell you, Monica, that all the politicians, especially this particular government, have taken the vaccine. The ex-government actually led the charge, and they took it. I was there when the former premier, what's his name? Help me out here.
Premier Alden
McLaughlin, right?
Yeah.
When he took it, the Speaker of the House at the time took it. So a lot of them really led the charge with taking it. So I don't know that that's any longer a valid
and one of the things
excuse.
is obviously the individual might not quite understand how even the approval process works, and I could just really quickly highlight, because it's a very comprehensive way that these things are done. But these things, before they are allowed to be given to the public like it's being given today, it had to go through a extensive period of double blind trial periods where people volunteered and signed pretty much their life away to be a part of this trial to test out the vaccine once it went to human trials. Prior to human trials, they did other studies within different animals, and so with the mRNA vaccine, which is the what COVID is, they had this technology out there for quite some time. It's a more advanced form of a vaccine. But then they were able to put some of the contents to make it effective against COVID and fighting COVID-19. And so far, it really is a very effective vaccine. Now, I mean, some people want to say, well, I don't know what 10 years down the road is going to do or be like, or 20 years down the road. We don't know what's going to happen with that. But can't you say the same thing? Can't you make that same argument for all of the vaccines that's been out for quite some time as well? I know in my lifetime, I think my generation, I'm 34 years old, and my generation, we missed out on the chickenpox vaccine. It was not in existence when I was growing up, but now there is a chickenpox vaccine for all of the younger kids that are coming out there, and you're not hearing of people getting chickenpox anymore. However, why aren't people up in arms about getting that vaccine when that's one of the things that obviously is working? So you can make the argument saying 10 years down the road we don't know what's going to happen, but you don't know that about the chickenpox vaccine. You don't know what 30, 40, 50 years down the road is going to do for the measles vaccine. So these things are studied and based on, I mean, I am not the scientist behind this, but I work directly for the scientists. And what they tell me is anytime, and they know a lot about these vaccine productions and how it's carried out. So usually when you're doing a new or studying a new vaccine, within the first 6 months of any type of large scale study, you're going to likely start to find out all of the different reactions that would be associated with it. And so we are long beyond that time period. In fact, at the time they were studying the COVID vaccine, there was so much infections going on. You had the whole world that had an interest, and pretty much so much money being thrown into trying to figure out and pay people to be able to carry out studies. And there were literally there were hundreds of different studies going on. Most of them, they failed. They did not go through, and they were not able to continue on and become a vaccine that is now offered today, because whatever they were doing, whatever ingredients that they put inside the vaccine, it did not work. It was not effective. It caused issues. And so they had to stop it, and it just didn't go anywhere. The ones that obviously had success, those are the ones that eventually became approved in order to be given to to people like me who is fully vaccinated, and what 76% of the Cayman Islands population, and about 5.5 billion people around the world are now vaccinated. I could tell you, if there was a lot of issues with the vaccine, there would be so many more people crying out, screaming, saying this thing is horrible. You don't hear a whole lot of that. The few thousand people that likely had an adverse reaction is statistically irrelevant when you divide 1,000 by 5.5 billion people, or I think that's around the number. It may be a little bit more than that, but a few thousand. When you divide the number of people that have some sort of reaction to the vaccine, because you're going to have some people that have a reaction. No one's saying that you will not have a reaction, but the primary reactions are going to be soreness in your arm. You're going to maybe pop a little bit of a low-grade fever or something. You're going to feel really exhausted and tired for maybe a day or two. So all vaccines have some sort of reaction. I'll tell you, my personal experience with the vaccine was I had less reaction to getting the vaccine than I usually do with the flu vaccine. When I had the flu vaccine, I would say my whole entire arm was not usable for almost a day or two. It was very, very sore. With the COVID vaccine, at least my experience, and everyone has a little different experience, I understand that. It was really just at the injection point, and the day after, I just was very tired, and that was that. And the second dose was the time that I had more of a reaction than the first dose. So I mean, people need to make sure that they are using great judgment, using good judgment, and doing the best thing for not just themselves, but also the community. But just to go into some of the other things that was mentioned about the changes in quarantine, it looks like, okay, so if you are fully vaccinated and you're coming in from outside the Cayman Islands, what was 5 days, you're now required to quarantine for 7 days, and then you'll take that PCR test on day 8. And if your test come back that you are negative, you are free from quarantine. If you are an unverified vaccinated individual, so you might have gotten a vaccine, but you, for some whatever reason it is, or you're not able to provide some sort of proof to travel Cayman, you will be required to quarantine for 10 days. And then if you are unvaccinated, it's going to be 14 days for your quarantine. And then the Premier also did mention that they're going to be re-implementing the geo-tagging. And he also did mention that no unvaccinated visitors are allowed to come to the Cayman Islands. So if you're unvaccinated and you're a Caymanian, a resident, or a or you're a dependent to a resident or a Caymanian, then you could then enter the Cayman Islands. But if you are just a regular tourist coming on in for a nice, great, wonderful time for what we offer in the beautiful Cayman Islands, you're not going to be able to come if you're unvaccinated at this time. And then Premier Panton also just talked about, which is a very real thing. One of the things I know I've mentioned on this show before is the Sister Islands is a very vulnerable population. They have a limited advanced healthcare access because pretty much Grand Cayman is where a lot of the more critical type of patients will end up having to go to. And so they're very vulnerable there. They also have a very aged population. They have a lot of older folks that live out there, and so even as a fully vaccinated person, they have an increased risk still because they have other issues going on, and no one wants to get this thing whether they're fully vaccinated or not. So the Sister Islands needs to be protected, and so the PACT government, that's part of what they took into account while they were making some very tough decisions on making sure that they are going to put the safety of the folks living in Cayman at the top, is the highest priority. And so next thing that was highlighted was the rumors. So many rumors out there that are just just running rampant. It's just completely insane how much misinformation, disinformation, people hearing this and spreading a lot of gossip. And
I was going to
that's
say,
just-
Kevin, that this is one of the interesting things about today for me was trying to keep the rumors in check. So we were getting a lot of them. And obviously, as I'm receiving them, I'm trying to verify them. You know, I know what sources in the past that I can rely on.
Rely
And
on,
say,
right.
okay, this source is like 99% accurate. But the rumors were just floating around. There was one rumor that 6 children at Savannah Primary had it. That turned out to be completely false. And it's not helpful how quickly rumors can spread, to be quite honest. And it's, you know, causes more damage in the sense that we can't filter through even the accurate information because we're having to cross-check and triple-check all this fake information. So when we do get something that is accurate, that kind of gets put in the back burner. So if people want accurate information, sometimes you've got to hold back on the spreading of rumors. I understand that every single person is very, very anxious to know what's going on and to try to understand how widespread this community transmission is. But I think what people need to know and need to really comprehend is these positive cases in real term means that we have had community transmission for quite some time in this community. So this isn't anything new. That means that you've actually been living with community spread and community transmission. So don't panic right now. I mean, that's not the way to respond.
Yeah.
We just have to try to address it and get it under control so that it does not continue to spread, especially among children. I mean, children going back to schools have been extremely sick in the last couple of months since they've returned from summer vacation.
And it may not have been COVID though, because RSV has been one of those things that's I know circulating here a whole lot. I have a lot of friends that have children that have had their child hospitalized or had to go to the hospital because of RSV. So we don't know if that was COVID. I'm going to say that there was a good chance they would have, if they ended up in the hospital, they would have been tested. So yes, community transmission, in my opinion, has been spreading in Cayman for some time, but it was not at any significant level. Because we know again how contagious the Delta variant is, and if it was really at a huge amount, you would have likely detected a lot more cases by now. So, you know, I would say yes, you've been living with it, but not living with it like the rest of the world is living with it. So.
Yeah, for sure. Now we do have a parent who has shared a slide here with us, an email that they received, and they're sorry, I've got a cranky 5-year-old in my hands here, but they're asking for some explanation of what this means exactly. I wonder, Kevin, if you might be willing to take a jab at trying to dissect what this email is.
So let me read it real quick. It says, please find your lab results attached from the blah, blah, blah. Attention, a negative test does not give you authorization to exit quarantine process. Please remain in quarantine as per the medical officer of health. Failure to comply may result in a criminal prosecution to any party involved. So yeah, so this is a notice that's saying that, you know, the person still needs to remain in quarantine because if they are what you consider a close contact to an investigation, they are supposed to be in quarantine for approximately 14 days. And so if they're in quarantine for 14 days, that's saying that you need to remain there unless you are cleared by public health. So that's very similar to, it's not exactly worded that way when people are getting their results here in Florida. They would just say, because, you know, the language they use here is a lot softer language, but it does tell you that, you know, you might want to pretty much, in summary, take a test at 14 days just to be sure that you're not one of those people that might turn positive on day 13 or 14.
Right. So again, just to be clear, if you're receiving this email, folks, you've got a test result, but you still have to remain quarantined. I wonder if they're providing these families, since they had to go into a quarantine scenario in very short notice, I'm hoping that Travel Cayman is providing them with necessary support in case they need it. they certainly would not have made any plans to be in
Yeah.
quarantine.
See, that's one of my big fears, Sandra. One of the things I really would have liked to have had an answer to earlier on is one of the questions that I had, and one of the things that I highlighted before when I said start creating your personal plan. Remember, you can't depend the government on every single thing to do everything for you. So everyone needs to take personal responsibility. I know this is no fault to anyone's own. I mean, I know you didn't ask for it, but at the same time, the government cannot be expected to do everything for you, and so it's just the part of the risk of living life. So people need to really, really create and think about their plan, just like you would prepare for an approaching hurricane. You are now preparing for a public health emergency, a public health situation where you're going to have a lot of sicknesses coming on in eventually, whether it's, at the end of the year, at some point in time, you will be faced with COVID, just like you mentioned, Sandra. Everyone's going to be exposed to it at some point in time. So start creating your plan as if, guess what? If you get exposed, you know what steps you can take. So you could have a plan A, have a plan B, and try to figure out exactly how you're going to really handle the situation. Every individual, every household needs to do that. Every business also needs to do that as well. Again, people need to figure out, okay, if I am not able to go to my office and work because I'm in quarantine, let me have this conversation with my boss so I could figure out, can I work remotely? Because I still need to earn my paycheck. So let me talk to my boss. And the same thing, your boss is going to be like, well, okay, let's work this out because I want the work to be carried out. How can this happen? And so everyone needs to really start thinking about these things, so they know that this is going to be the way this is going to be like this for quite some time. It's not going to change overnight, and there's nothing that's just going to come in and just completely fix it immediately. So people need to really think about how they're going to live with COVID-19, not stress too much about it, not be up in, not being like doomsday is here and everything is falling apart. The world's not falling apart. Just like Dr. Lee stated, he was out, he went to restaurants, he went to pubs, he went other places out and about, and he was able to live his life. However, you got to keep in mind, how can I live my life in a safe way? And if I was to live my life and contract this illness, okay, how am I going to handle it?
Yes. Oh, very, very interesting, Kevin. Thank you so much. Folks, I think that's probably what we've got for you this evening. I mean, obviously continue to tune in. We'll see if there was anything. We didn't really get to hear all of the speakers, obviously. So, we'll see if we kind of miss anything significant that we can go back to. But at this point, I think I just want to encourage people to definitely continue to stay tuned. Just try to be mindful of the rumor mill. As we hear something that we can confirm or we're relatively sure that it's somewhat accurate information, we will definitely post it. We're trying our best to verify as much of the information that's coming through to us as possible. In fact, Catholic School has actually released a statement, which we're going to be putting up shortly here on the website, in relation to that rumor that was circulating about them, so that maybe it adds some clarity. You'll have to wait until you see it. But people are continually saying, why, even in this current situation, why is the government encouraging people to get vaccinated? What would you say to that, Kevin?
Because we need more. I personally will not be extremely happy with the Cayman status until about 90% of the population is fully vaccinated. That's my personal goal for the Cayman Islands. I believe that will achieve that herd immunity. And why I say about 90%, which is probably higher than some of the numbers that you probably hear in other parts of the world, that's because Cayman really never had a significant COVID problem like the rest of the world, where they
Yes.
had a lot of people that established natural immunity because a lot of people were sick. And so there was a lot of people that's out there that's not vaccinated that still had immunity due to the fact they already contracted the virus. The issue with that is the length of time that you have that immunity is a lot less than getting vaccinated. There's no exact number because some people might get it again 3 months after getting COVID. Some people, it might take up to a year after getting having and going through COVID. There's no exact science, no exact number, but and based on some of the initial data that is still not all peer reviewed, and so it's not 100% confirmed. But this is the data that's coming in, at least to my health department, is that those people that have a more serious illness, a lot more, they're really, really sick with their infection, their natural immunity tends to be a little longer than someone that had a very mild illness where they had very, very few symptoms. That's we've had individuals get COVID up to 3 times already in my county, and sometimes it was 2 times it was not bad. The next time it was really bad. Other times it was kind of a mixture. So again, what we don't see as much of is if you had it really bad, you develop your natural immunity, and then we're not seeing as many of those cases coming in. But again, that's all very, very early data. It's not data that is, enough evidence is really supporting a lot of that. And what we do know is we don't want to play the guessing game on natural immunity, because that's going to take a long time to figure out the facts with that. But we do have data on the vaccine. So we do know that that's the number one thing anyone can do in order to protect themselves and protect others. And so we're going to go, public health experts are going to go with what we know, not what we are potentially seeing. So one of the next things, Sandra, I know you're probably on mommy duty as well,
Yes.
too. But one of the next things that was interesting that I know is probably going to be highlighted by a lot of those who are not for the vaccine. They're likely going to poke some holes and probably, and I'm going to tell you, they're going to bring in some arguments about the booster vaccine.
Yes.
Because based on what was announced at today's press conference, it looks like the UK is approving the use of booster vaccine for those who are 50 years old and older. I think that's what he said. And so I know here in the United States, that's still up for debate. Remember, the US have different regulatory authorities than in the UK. The UK has their own policy advisors and makers. The US has the FDA and ACIP. So those 2 organizations really are the ones that really set the protocols for vaccination in America. And so right now, the booster vaccine is really only for those who are more severely immunocompromised. It's not necessarily at this time, it's really up for debate on anyone that's not severely immunocompromised. So right now, it might take some time before the booster vaccines will be approved for mass use here in the USA. At first, I know President Biden had kind of made an announcement, or his administration made an announcement, that it would likely be available by fall. However, there's been some controversy with that whole entire thing, and that's been walked back a little bit based on there's not enough data. And again, they're using data to back this up. Yes, you might be seeing some positive trends, but there's not enough data to completely support that it is time for a booster vaccine. We know Israel is trying out some other things, and they've already launched a booster program, but there's some literature on that is showing that there's not enough data to really say that that's the way forward at this present time. So again, there's going to be a lot of different people in the medical community that's going to debate this issue for quite some time until it's all worked out, which is, in my opinion, it's good and it's bad, because it proves to me, and it should prove to other people, that there are people that are going to be vocal and make sure that if they want to make sure that this is a data-driven thing, they're checking it. There's checks and balances going on. At the same time, unfortunately, I know people who are not for the COVID vaccine are going to likely use it as fuel to say, see, you're not being data driven, and they're going to use it as an argument, and I don't like that. So it's a
Sorry,
double-edged sword.
sorry, Kev. What I'm going to do is I've managed to pull up Zoom. Although the feed is dead, I'm going to see if I can share the Zoom feed with audio. I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but at least this would allow people to listen in.
We'll give it a try.
So let me try this and see.
A conversation that will certainly happen if not tonight, by tomorrow. But clearly, I mean, what the industry have indicated to us, and I think is eminently fair, is that if we were going to not proceed, and this was outside the context of the current scenario that we've been dealing with over the past week, was that they wanted to know as soon as possible whether we were going to proceed. And I think, given where we're at, it coincidentally, it probably is a convenient time for them to have this communication, and so that I think they know how to plan now, and they have a degree of certainty. It's not the best news that perhaps that they would have liked to have heard, but at the end of the day, they've got clarity, and the views of our government is that we are going to put the interests of people first, and try to ensure that we have things under control and we can move forward in the safest fashion, with the best degree of success in terms of reopening.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I think that's all I have for you. I just have one for the health minister, if Ms. Turner's there. This is really, it sort of follows on more from the question, the public health advice that was given, the advice that was given by Public Health England, which is about having all of the necessary resources. Can we just get some understanding on where we feel that we're short when it comes to healthcare resources?
Well, it's just making sure that with this current community spread, in all honesty, we were making sure that, and we assured the community that the medical team, HSA, and memorandum of understanding with other healthcare professionals here on island, that that we are all prepared for it. Now, where public health is concerned, we realized that we had to bolster up the resources where manpower.
Right.
Just making sure we have enough hands on deck. Bearing in mind, as Dr. Lee alluded to, the same public health officers that are out there that are swabbing and testing and contact tracing are the same ones that run that clinic. And we realized in the middle of, for the beginning of this pandemic in 2020, they were up to 69 staff. And over the course of the time today, they have 83 staff, and they're actively seeking 30 more temporary staff from other departments within the healthcare facility. And I know for sure that other government departments, Travel Cayman has been assisting them as well in the past week and a half, 2 weeks. And there is a global demand for persons in the healthcare industry. So we're definitely on the ball with that and making sure that we can give them as much resources as we can. But from what we were told yesterday in that briefing of the entire cabinet caucus, we are an enviable jurisdiction with the high vaccination uptake, how we have handled, this pandemic thus far. We are doing very well. Now, of course, we didn't want this to happen, but it was inevitable as we eased into the reopening or trying to open our borders. So here we are. Unfortunately, we wouldn't have wanted it to happen, but it happened at a time that we can definitely test our resources and get it under control. And we're doing everything that we can in order to give them the resources that they need.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I've got. Thanks, Donna.
Okay, thank you very much, Wendy. I have one other question from the public before we go to April from Radio Cayman. Will testing be open to anyone who may want to check their COVID status? This may be a question for health officials. Will testing be open to anyone who may want to check their COVID status? Can someone from Health Services Authority respond to this question? We have Dr. Simmons coming to answer the question.
Good evening, everyone. At this time, we're primarily focusing on the children of Georgetown Primary School. However, for those who would like to check their COVID status, we do encourage you to book with the COVID screening clinic at the HSA. And hopefully my CEO won't kill me for this as well. You can also go to the Doctors Hospital drive-through as well, their Cayman Bay outlet as well. Health City also offers that services.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much for that answer. We're now going to go to April Cummings from Radio Cayman, who is joining us via Zoom. April?
Hi, Donna. I don't want to sound frivolous, but this question I've had a couple people ask about, it's related to the Miss Cayman event and people who may have bought tickets for this event. They're just concerned about how all that's going to work. I'm not sure who that question is for. I'm assuming perhaps the tourism minister. He's still there?
Yes, he is. Hold on.
Hi, April. I apologize. I didn't get the full question. Can you repeat it again for me, please?
Certainly. I've had a couple of people ask who've purchased tickets to attend the Miss Cayman event. Now that it's going to be virtual, they're trying to figure out what's going to happen with regard to their tickets as they purchase them ahead of time.
Well, I assume, I haven't spoken to the committee chairman, but I assume that they would have to be refunded. And the government has given commitment to assist with any expenses. And if this is one of them, then we will do so. But as it is a government brand, we have to ensure that the safety is first and making sure that people are not cheated of their opportunity. But they will be able to see them online all the same.
All right, thank you very much for that. This too is a type of ticket question, although of a different nature. I had a couple of people who had purchased, they're Caymanians, but they purchased airline tickets on other airlines, and they're concerned with these changes that now they may lose their money. So for example, someone who was going to visit their child in school in the States, that sort of thing. I, even after all this, am still unclear on exactly where we are with all that. Is there someone who can address that concern for them and maybe just summarize where are we actually right now? I know the numbers of the phases, but where are we in practical purposes, for practical purposes?
Well, April, I'll be happy to give another update at another press conference, but up until yesterday, the country was, or up till today with our announcement, the situation with the airlines was pretty straightforward. The intention was that we wanted to open on the 14th. They didn't want to start any flights until around October, when it's closer to when the projected quarantine would be removed. As a result, the decision today would change the airline's business decisions, I'm assuming. So there has to be conversation. So tomorrow I'll be reaching out to the CEO of Airports Authority, who is the rep that discusses registration to come into the Cayman Islands, and see what the appetite is of the representatives for the airlines, what their intentions are. I mean, by all means, we still want people to come as long as they're vaccinated and willing to go into quarantine for the 7 days as we highlighted. So by all means, it's not that we want people to stop coming. Whether there's going to be enough supply and demand under those quarantine restrictions is up for question. And I think they will have to express whether they will want to continue under what they've said that they were going to do before. So I won't know that information until in the next couple of days, but I'm happy to give you an update if you ask me at the next press conference.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I have a question. This one is from a listener who happened to be at a health clinic, women's health clinic this morning, and was concerned that there were people who had been told to isolate related to the Georgetown primary incident, but instead were in this specific area of the hospital. And so the question was really, are there plans to address this potential exposure in this specific instance?
April, I believe the CEO of the HSA is coming to address your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I wasn't quite sure who directly to address that one to. And this is from someone who happened to be in the area at the time who sent this in.
Good evening, April. It's Lizette Yearwood here. I would need to get the specifics of that incident. However, again, we just are encouraging people when they're told to isolate, to stay at home until they're contacted by public health. I know there's been a lot of anxiety. There are individuals who just want to get tested. And as Dr. Lee explained earlier, we need to concentrate on the primary contacts right now. All of the resources need to be geared in that area. If you're contacted and asked to come forward to get tested, then you do so. But if there are multiple people who are running to the clinic to get tested just because they think that they should be tested, they're concerned, and I completely understand the anxiety, but you have to trust the public health professionals. If you're contacted and you're told that you need to be PCR tested, we will make sure that you're a priority. Individuals, I understand, may have come to the hospital to get tested in advance, but we will make sure that you're tested in the order of priority. If you have had a direct contact with the positive, you will be a priority. And if not, then you'll be contacted once those results come back. So I've been talking to multiple people today because we've had questions of all sorts of scenarios. But again, if you go back to the basics, the primary contact is somebody who has been within 6 feet of an individual for 15 minutes or more. If that individual has not been, does not meet that criteria, you are not a primary contact. And therefore you wait to be contacted, because then once we get the results of those individuals, if there is somebody who is a positive in that circle, we will then extend that circle to contacts of those individuals. So you have to trust the process. And I do encourage you just to be a little bit patient. I know you're concerned, but we will respond to any questions or concerns on the flu hotline. And I do need to apologize today. The flu hotline has been quite busy. There have been many calls that we have not been able to pick up, but we will be going through and responding to all those persons who have left messages. We are in the process of staffing the flu hotline up for tonight and tomorrow because we understand that persons do have concerns. So if you have concerns, call the flu hotline, talk to a healthcare professional, go through that scenario, because every one of the scenarios are different. But again, if you go back to the basics with the criteria for the primary contact, I think it will allay a number of fears, and it will probably reduce the number of people that are running to get tested. Okay.
Thank you very much. That helps a great deal. Don, I think those are all my questions that I can find at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, April. We're going to wrap up with Sandra from CMR via Zoom. Sandra, I asked the question of the Premier earlier, and yes, and his answer was he didn't have a number. So, yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Sandra. One final question. Do we have any idea when the new regs will be released or will start?
Well, we will be working on those in the next day or two. So we're going to try to get them done as quickly as possible, possibly by the end of this week.
Okay, I do have a final question that just came in. Maybe this is for Minister of Education about the policy on extracurricular sporting activities in schools. How will those, if at all, be carried out over this period?
I've been reliably informed by my chief officer that they have been postponed until further notice, till we get a grip on exactly what obtains.
Okay, thank you very much. Minister O'Connor Connolly, any final words from the panel?
Just a
Minister of Health?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Just a gentle reminder of the vaccination clinics that are still ongoing tomorrow morning from 9 until 1 over in Cayman Brack at the Aston Ruddy Center in the medical wing, and over in the district of East End at the health center from 5 until 8 p.m. It is our way of just, you know, availing, people need to avail themselves in this opportunity in getting vaccinated.
Okay,
Thank you.
do we know when the next press briefing will be? People want to know.
Well, up until today, we had planned to have one tomorrow.
Tomorrow, correct.
But it depends on what transpires. But we may have one tomorrow. We'll see. If we do not plan to have one, we will certainly advise, and there will be press releases going out confirming whatever details and updating whatever details are available to us at that time.
Okay, any final words?
Yeah,
from the panel?
I just want to thank my parliamentary secretary, Ms. Catherine Wilkes, and certainly Chief Officer Cacho and the rest of the team that worked into the wee hours of this morning and continue to show their commitment to the education for students here in Cayman.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the public and of course the media for joining us today, and of course to our esteemed panelists for providing us with this very informative session here in the press briefing. Remember, you can watch the entire press briefing on demand on the CIG television YouTube channel. Also, you have gov.ky and hsa.ky, the places where you can go to find out vaccination schedules as well as information on COVID-19. Until next time, everyone, enjoy your evening.